Hi, my name is Sofia Green. I'm a researcher from the Galapagos Whale Shark Project, and today I want to talk to you about this amazing animal and the research that's being done about it in the Galapagos Islands. So what we're doing to discover the secrets of this ocean giant. First of all, I want to start with something very basic. It's a question we get asked a lot when we talk about them. And it is, what is a whale shark? Is it a whale or is it a shark? A whale shark is actually a shark. You can see that it has the anatomy of a shark. It is truly a fish. It is not a marine mammal. And the easiest way to tell this when you don't know much about marine species is the way of the movement of the tail. You see marine mammals have an up and down movement and fish have a side to side movement. Not only that, but obviously they have gill slits, which allow them to breathe underwater, and the rest of the anatomy that you see here. The whale shark is very peculiar. It is the only single species in the family Rhicodontidae. It comes from the order of the Oryctolobiformes, which has 43 species, which are the carpet sharks. So other examples of this group are the nurse sharks, the zebra sharks, the wobegongs, and then there's the whale shark. What we know about whale sharks. We know that the whale shark is the largest fish and shark in the oceans. It can reach up to 18 meters long, and in general, it can weigh up to 20 tons. This is the weight of 4 adult elephants, so you can imagine the size of these animals. Here on average, we see sharks of about 12, 13 meters on average. What else we know about them? We know that they're filter-feeding sharks, same as the basking sharks and the megamouth sharks. We know that they have hundreds of small teeth that are not exactly used. It's believed that this is a vestigial structure. And we know that they feed on zooplankton, fish and coral eggs, and small fish. We also know that they are ovoviviparous, also known as yolk sac viparity. And what this means is the whale shark gives birth to live young, but it actually holds them inside her reproductive system in embryonic cases, almost like eggs, inside herself until they are ready to be free swimming animals, and then they come out of the egg sac inside of her, and then she gives birth to live young. We also know that the whale shark can dive up to at least 2,000 meters deep, and I'll explain why I say at least later on. The deepest dive recorded and reported has been up to 1,928 meters deep. We also know that the whale shark has a circumglobal distribution in tropical and temperate latitudes. The whale shark is a warm water swimming species, which is very nice since it makes it the perfect species to study to people like myself who are not very good in cold waters. So they're the perfect shark to study. They are also found in all the seas of the world except for the Mediterranean. Here you can see that they are found in several aggregation sites around the world. Even though they're known to be a solitary species, there are these sites around the world where they're seen frequently, and you know that there are these aggregations where they're most likely feeding. Not in every place, as we'll see, but these are the most common aggregation sites around the world. What we don't know about whale sharks, there's a lot we don't know about them. Even though right now they're one of the most studied species of sharks, they still remain a great mystery. We know more about ants than we do about whale sharks. Why is this? Well, it is a very difficult species to study. It spends a lot of time in open ocean. It's in places where it's hard to reach, and it's just a very mysterious species. We have not discovered a lot about them. What are the main things we still don't know about them and need to know? We don't really know their global population size. We don't know where they're reproducing. We don't know where their pups are born. We don't know where they spend the first 3 to 5 years of their life. They're not seen during this period. We don't fully understand their migratory routes, which groups are connected to which, and we do not know everything about their diving behavior. We're starting to find clues into what they do beneath the surface of the water, but we don't really know exactly what's going on at the depths that they reach. Okay, but then we ask ourselves, why does this all matter? Why should we care about what's going on with the whale sharks? The whale sharks are considered an endangered species. They are categorized in the red list of endangered species as an endangered species, which is unfortunate since they were downgraded from vulnerable to this category of endangered in 2016. The whale shark's future is uncertain. They suffer a plethora of anthropogenic threats, which is decimating their population. What are the major threats that they suffer? They suffer incidental and targeted fisheries, especially as you can see in this image in this slide, with huge, massive industrial fisheries. They're often caught as bycatch, so it's not even the intended species that they're meant to catch, but they end up on ships anyway. And then sometimes, even though people will try to release them alive, this animal will already be dead. Or a lot of the times, they will not even try to release this animal because they know that their fins are worth something in the black market. Then they're also targeted, less so nowadays than it was before, but there are still some people that target the whale shark because of the value of their fins in the black market for the shark fin soup. Then we have vessel strikes. Because they are a very shallow swimming species, as we have discovered, they spend most of their time, 50% of their life, in the first 50 meters of the water column. So they spend a lot of time close to the surface. They actually get hit by a lot of boats. And with increasing marine traffic that we have growing at a crazy rate year after year, they're getting hit by boats more frequently. So we generally see whale sharks that come with huge chunks of their bodies missing, with chunks of their fins missing, and we know that this was probably a propeller strike. The ones that we see are the ones that are surviving these strikes. However, there are a lot that are not. Then we have problems like marine pollution. What do I mean by marine pollution? I mean plastic pollution. I mean oil spills. I mean abandoned fishing nets. All of these are causing problems to filter feeding species like the whale shark. And then we have climate change. And the scariest thing about this is that the impact of climate change on a species like the whale shark is still very much unknown. So this is something that we're trying to understand and see how it might affect the species in the future. The global population of whale sharks has been reduced by over 50% in the last 75 years. That is a very, very little time for half of a population to disappear. And if we keep going at this rate, we will no longer have whale sharks in the oceans. Just this year, with 2 of the whale sharks that we tagged in this past outing that we had of the Whale Shark Project, we had 2 out of 8 whale shark tags end up on land. And even though this does not mean that the whale shark itself ended up on land, it goes to show that there are high encounters with whale sharks and vessels. There was some sort of encounter with these 2 sharks and a vessel for the satellite tag to end up on land. For example, we have the tag of this 11-meter female. She was a female that we tagged up in Darwin on the 19th of August in 2021, who suddenly reported on land on the 19th of August of 2021. And when this happened, we were shocked. We were like, no, this can't be right. And when we looked back, we saw that there was a change in her behavior and during a certain moment close to the coast of Ecuador. And suddenly she stopped diving and then ended up on land a few days later. So we know that there was some encounter with a vessel where they saw this whale shark or just somehow found the tag. Mind you, I have to mention that these tags don't float. So they must have either, the tag might have caught on the net of a fisherman or might have been removed from the whale shark itself and then taken to land. Then we have another female 1 month later reports on land on the 1st of November of 2021. And we couldn't believe our eyes. It was like, how can this be happening again? How often are whale sharks encountering vessels? If 2 out of our 8 tagged whale sharks from last season have this encounter, then we cannot even imagine how many whale sharks that we don't have tagged are having this kind of encounter. This one, for example, is a female, a 12-meter female that we tagged on the 12th of September of 2021, also up in Darwin. And we see that on the 23rd of October, her track changes direction, and then once again, she stops diving. So it's not necessarily the whale shark that we're looking at, it's just the satellite tag. So we don't fully know what the destiny of these whale sharks was, but we can see that once again, there was an encounter with a vessel. And it just shows how intense the fishing pressure is in this area for these whale sharks to be encountering vessels. Then we have the effects of marine pollution, as I mentioned earlier. And this is another animal that was sighted up in Darwin last season in 2021. And you can see that this massive fishing net, abandoned fishing net, already has so many grown barnacles, goose barnacles growing all over it, is literally ripping into the pectoral fin of this whale shark and cutting into her fin as she's swimming. You can see the blood streaming off of her. Thankfully, my dad, Jonathan, the director of the project, found her. and is managing to cut with his knife and release this whale shark from the horrible weight of having to carry this. There he goes, he manages to pull it off, suckerfish coming off with it. And even though he tried to take that net up to the surface, he says that it was incredibly, incredibly heavy, which is why it was cutting into that whale shark, and he had to let it go, unfortunately. But there you see a successful release of an entangled whale shark, and the whale shark swims off, probably in huge relief, because that must have been a very, very painful experience. So this is the kind of thing we want to avoid. There are other problems with sharks being used by humans. So you may not know this, but in a lot of the medicine that we use for joint pains, whether it's because you're an athlete or you have joint problems, a lot of it has shark oil in it. And this is something that we have to be very careful about if we don't want to support these industries. So next time you buy this kind of medicine, make sure it doesn't say anything like elasmobranch oils or chondrichthyes, or sometimes it even says shark oils. So make sure that when you do buy this kind of medicine, you are not supporting something like this. In another case, some people take shark fins and just set them up as trophies. Some people believe this is fashionable, this is cool. So I'll ask the question again. Okay, yes, the population of whale sharks is going down. Still, why is this important? You know, humans have this tendency of wanting to know, how does this affect us? Why should we invest money in protecting a species like this? Like, what is the importance of the species? And the whale shark is actually a highly important species, both ecologically and economically, as I will explain. Ecologically, they serve for nutrient transport. You see, they feed in areas of the ocean where there is a lot of productivity, a lot of nutrients, and then they travel high distances since they're highly migratory animals, and then go to ocean areas where there's very little food, very little nutrients, and they poop. And this way, their feces actually brings and sprouts life, because it brings nutrients to ocean areas that are nutrient deficient. So they're literally creating life in ocean areas that would lack it otherwise. Whale sharks actually also naturally mitigate the effects of climate change through carbon sequestration, the same way that the great whales do. Animals, the bigger they are, the more carbon they have in their body. We're all made up of carbon. So the bigger you are, the more carbon you have in your body. When an animal like this dies and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, they're actually taking all that carbon down with them to the bottom of the ocean, taking it out of the atmosphere for centuries. And this is a fantastic way to mitigate the effects of climate change. Not only that, but then they provide food to the deep ocean system, which is fantastic. They also regulate the levels of zooplankton and phytoplankton in the ocean. Of course, they feed off of zooplankton, and when they do, phytoplankton burst, there's more food in this level, since obviously they're regulating part of the food chain. The whale shark is also a very important species economically. Why? What do I mean by that? The whale shark helps maintain coastal population economies through tourism. People travel from all over the world to see the whale shark. This is an incredible species that people are dying to see underwater, whether it's diving, snorkeling, free diving. And so people will travel all over the world to places where whale sharks are sighted, helping the economy of the places where they're visiting. For example, Galapagos actually flourishes on people coming and diving here to look for the whale shark. And a live whale shark is worth more alive than it is dead. One single shark can generate around $30,000 per year and over $2 million in its lifetime. That is absolutely fantastic. Meanwhile, a whale shark fin is being sold in the black market for around $20,000. So you can see a whale shark is definitely worth a lot more alive than it is dead. One other thing about the whale shark, which is absolutely amazing, is that it is considered an umbrella species. And an umbrella species is an animal that when you protect it, because it uses such big ocean areas, when you protect these ocean areas to protect the whale shark, you're actually protecting a lot more than just the whale shark. And for example, with a whale shark, you're also protecting other endangered species that use these same ocean areas, such as other species of sharks, such as tuna, such as turtles, such as rays, marine mammals, coral reefs. And it is a fantastic way of using the whale shark as an ocean ambassador to protect a lot more than just the species. Because it is considered a highly charismatic species, it's something that attracts people, it is relatively easier to find funds to protect the ocean areas used by a whale shark than it may be to protect the ocean areas used by a serpulid or a little ocean worm. People don't really care about the ocean worm, they care about the whale shark. And even though they both have ecological roles to play, it is easier to convince people to protect the whale shark. So this is how that works. So what the Galapagos Whale Shark Project is doing is studying these animals to be able to inform policymakers of management strategies to protect the species. This study was founded in 2011 by Dr. Alex Hearn and Jonathan Green as co-founders of the project. And then making up the core team are myself, Sofia Green, and Jenny Back. We are the core team here in the Galapagos. Then we also work with scientists from around the world that partner up with us and help us make this study even better. We have scientists from Spain, Japan, New Zealand, Ecuador, Germany, England. So it's a fantastic group of researchers working to protect this species. The Galapagos Whale Sharks Project's objective is to provide information on the species to improve management practices both within the Galapagos Marine Reserve and the rest of the Eastern Tropical Pacific. As I mentioned, it was created in 2011 and since then carries out yearly expeditions to study the species in the Galapagos Marine Reserve. The research being done in the Galapagos is satellite tagging, photo identification, ultrasounds, blood samples, and tissue samples. And I'll go over each one of these point by point. Our study site is Darwin's Arch, this iconic place that people know for being one of the best dive sites from around the world. This is the place where seasonally we see whale sharks every year. And as you can see, this is what the dive site used to look like before the collapse of the arch. And then this middle photo shows what it was like when the arch collapsed. That actually was a photo taken by Sebastián Barrera, a guide from the Galapagos National Park, the day that the arch collapsed. And the day that the arch collapsed was a day that was very emotional for a lot of people. This iconic place collapsing, it created a lot of impact. It became local and international news. Everyone seemed to know about it. Even people that didn't know about it before suddenly felt really sad that they hadn't seen the arch in all its glory. But I think there's a lesson to be learned here. As my dad says, geological collapse is natural. However, ecological collapse is not. And that is what we're trying to prevent. The collapse of the arch was absolutely normal. It is made up of tuff, which is compacted ash. So through years, erosion will occur, natural erosion will occur, and it's natural to have this kind of collapse. But what's going on beneath the oceans because of the impact we humans are having is not natural. And this is what we're working against. So what's special about this study site? It is a rock formation next to an island in a highly pelagic, highly open ocean area. And the most amazing thing is the topography underneath. So this is a place where we have depths of 15 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters, and suddenly out of nowhere, we have drops all the way to 1,000 meters, very, very close to the dive site and to the island. So we see pelagic species that are not often seen close to coastal areas because of this. So this is why we see such amazing whale sharks and other shark species and other marine mammal species go past this amazing dive site. The Galapagos has a unique population worldwide. Here we see 99% adult females, not seen anywhere else in the world. Everywhere else in the world where we see these aggregations, they're made up predominantly out of male juveniles that are there for feeding aggregations. And the female adults were not really being seen anywhere in the world until we discovered this population. There are some other sites around the world, like Saudi Arabia, Santa Helena, that have a 50% population of males and females, but nowhere else do we see a group that is just predominantly female, especially adult females. Here in the Galapagos, we see adult females seasonally between the months of June and December. And then you may ask, so how do you differentiate between an adult female and an adult male? Well, this photo is a perfect example. The males you see have two large claspers, so they're very, very easy to identify. Meanwhile, the females have just an open cloaca. What we're doing to understand these animals better is satellite tracking. We're keeping track of their movements to be able to see which ocean areas are most important to their species, to then be able to protect these ocean areas and mitigate the impacts that we're having on the species. In the last 10 years, over 100 whale sharks have been tagged in the Galapagos Marine Reserve. As you can see from this map, the whale sharks leave the Galapagos Marine Reserve and they go everywhere. They like to keep us guessing, so this makes it a little hard for us to know exactly which ocean areas to protect. But the more we study them, the more we're understanding the patterns that they have in their movements and what makes them move in different directions. The tagging methodology has evolved over the past 10 years and is less invasive and more effective. You see, we used to use the subcutaneous tags that used to be inserted with a little tether and dart into the skin of the whale shark with a pressure gun. And even though this sounds very invasive, it isn't actually that bad, considering that whale sharks have one of the thickest skins of any animal in the animal kingdom. They have 30 centimeters of skin. So this is basically like a piercing for a human. It wasn't very invasive, but it looked terrible. Not only this, but you can see from the photo here on the left that we have a very long tether attaching the satellite tag. So the satellite tag used to float next to the whale shark as the whale shark swam. And the problem with this was that the tag looked like a very yummy fish to other shark species or big fish species that used to attack these tags and rip them out. And so we were losing tags very quickly. So our retention rate was very, very low, providing very little information for us to study these animals. Since then, we have moved on to the fin mount pressure clamp tags. So now we have these amazing pressure clamps where we place our tags in the tip of the dorsal fin. We don't penetrate the skin of the whale shark except for the pressure and the little golf studs that go into the animal's skin. The tagging is done very, very quickly and very uninvasively, and the tag retention is a lot higher. Here is an example of how the tagging looks like nowadays. That's me tagging a whale shark of about 12, 13 meters up in Darwin last year. As you can see, I just approached the whale shark, open up the tag, place it on the top of her fin, make sure that it's sitting nicely, double check it just in case, and then that's it. That whole process took less than 30 seconds, probably a lot less than that. At the same time, we have Jenny back, who just took a photo of the right-hand side of the whale shark and is now taking a photo of the left side of the whale shark for photo identification. A lot of science going on when we're up in Darwin. Another type of tag that we're using is the deep tag, which is being developed with the help of the Georgia Aquarium, some of our collaborators. Before I said that whale sharks can dive up to at least 1,928 meters. And I say at least because we don't really know how deep they dive. This is just a technological limitation that we have. The tags that we use to track these whale sharks can only go up to that depth before they implode because of the pressure at almost 2 kilometers underneath the surface of the water. So what we're trying to do is develop a tag that can withstand pressures up to 4,000 meters depth and hopefully even more. So another type of tag that we're using are these Animal-Borne camera tags, which are literally a camera and an accelerometer on a tag that allow us to see the perspective and the world of the whale shark beneath the water once we don't see them as divers. What is going on underneath there when nobody's around? And what we have found with these tags has actually been very fascinating. We've only managed to place these on the sharks a couple of times, but can you imagine seeing this when you recuperate this camera tag, put it out on your computer and find other shark species using a whale shark as a scratching post? What we believe this is for, it might be a method of these other shark species such as blacktip sharks, silky sharks, to actually clean themselves off the parasites on their skin by rubbing on the rough skin of the whale shark. So this was just such a fascinating find with this type of tag. Unfortunately, they cost a lot of money and they are difficult to place on the Galapagos whale sharks since our whale sharks don't spend a lot of time in this area. We're usually in Darwin for around 24, 36, maybe 48 hours, and then they leave. So having these tags on a whale shark at Darwin it involves a high risk of loss. Next, we have photo identification, which is a way for us to passively track whale sharks. So by taking photos of these animals, we can then see where they're also being sighted around the world. What we do is we use the photographs of the left and right side of the body of the whale shark in this position, as you can see here, to be able to identify them as individuals. You see the spot patterns of the whale shark are unique to each individual, same as your thumbprint. So we use this and we upload them to a book called the Wild Book for Whale Sharks, now known as the Shark ID book, where we have this algorithm that actually looks at the spot pattern and lets us know if this whale shark has been sighted somewhere else in the world. Now we have had over 600 individuals identified in the Galapagos. And some amazing things that we've seen with this is that we've recorded resightings of whale sharks coming back to the islands after 4 years, 9 years, 12 years, even 13.5 years after having been here. This was the last resighting that we had, and it was very, very exciting because now that we have more photos being uploaded to this wild book, the more photos that we have being shared by the guides, being taken by us, being taken by citizen scientists, so any of you can upload to this wild book or send them to me for me to upload them. The more we have of these, the more we're going to understand their population dynamics. And now that we have a lot of these in the Galapagos Wild Book, we're receiving more resightings. And the other day I uploaded one and it got resighting, and I couldn't believe that this was a whale shark that had first been seen in the Galapagos in 2008 and then was resighted in January of 2022. So this was very exciting. Photo ID allows us to track sharks passively and allows us to study their population dynamics. We can see their residence and return rates, how long they spend in the islands, how frequently they return here, to see how important the Galapagos Marine Reserve is. And then we can also see the abundance of these sharks in this area and the mortality rates. Then we have the ultrasounds. So in the Galapagos, as I mentioned, 99% are adult females, and these adult females are coming here with these large distended abdomens. So scientists here believe that they could be pregnant. You know, what else could these large distended abdomens mean? That is when they decide to run ultrasounds. What's really interesting about whale sharks is that not much is known about their reproduction. All we know about whale shark reproduction is about a female captured in Taiwan in 1995. This female had 304 pups inside of her. And not only that, but these pups were all at different stages of development, suggesting that whale sharks actually have delayed fertilization, meaning that they can fertilize their eggs not all at the same time, but at different stages. Not only this, but they sampled this group, a small group of this 304 pups, and they saw that most of these pups belong to one single male, meaning that a single male can produce 304 pups, which is amazing. This is probably why we don't see adult females and adult males encountering around the world very frequently, because they only need to meet up once to produce 304 pups. We're running ultrasounds in the Galapagos, and this is the first place where we're running ultrasounds on free-swimming wild whale sharks with the help of our collaborators and partners from the Okinawa Churaumi Aquarium in Japan. These two amazing scientists are bringing their ultrasound machine, which they had modified for underwater use, in their aquarium and tested on their aquarium species, individuals, to bring to the Galapagos Islands. And funny story, the first year that they arrive in 2017 to test this on free-swimming wild whale sharks, they bring this little briefcase, very heavy briefcase, weighs around 17 kilos, goes diving with this briefcase. And that year, there were very few whale sharks around because it was La Nina year, a very cold year. And so first day, no whale sharks. Second day, no whale sharks. Third day, no whale sharks. They were starting to despair, you know, they were here to do this project. They had come from halfway across the world. Finally, on the fourth day, they see a whale shark and they get super excited, turn on the ultrasound machine, run over to grab the ultrasound scan. And the minute that they approach and start the scan, they look up and they're right beneath the private parts of a whale shark, and they see two giant claspers. It was a male whale shark. We only have 1% male adults here in the Galapagos Marine Reserve, so what were the chances? Not very likely. Luckily, after this, they actually did see a couple females and managed to ultrasound them in 2017, but what they discovered was that this machine was not powerful enough to get the scans that they needed Since, as I mentioned, the whale shark has such thick skin, so the ultrasound machine did not penetrate deep enough. So they came back in 2018 with a stronger machine. They asked the government of Japan to allow them to produce this extremely strong ultrasound just for this purpose, got the appropriate permits, and then came back, and we had successful scans. What we saw was very interesting. So the belief was that all these females that are coming to the Galapagos must be pregnant because they have this giant distended abdomen. And so we thought, yes, we're going to ultrasound them and they're going to be pregnant, full of babies. And actually what we discovered is not this. None of the whale sharks that were scanned and ultrasounded had any pups in them. They just had developed follicles, which is what you can see in this image. I personally see this image and I don't see anything. However, our team of experts was able to look at this and identify the developed follicles, which show this is a sexually mature female, ready for reproduction, ready for birth, but she wasn't currently pregnant. So this was a bit of a shock to us. It was a surprise. However, only 4 successful scans were run in 2018. So since then, we've been trying to get the team from the Okinawa Churaumi Aquarium to come back. And they will be coming back in 2022 to run a few more ultrasounds to see what is the difference between the whale sharks coming here in September and whale sharks coming here earlier in the season, maybe June, July, to see if maybe they're pregnant earlier on in the season, and maybe here they had just given birth and that's why they were not pregnant. So that's something that we're looking at now. We are also taking blood samples, which is not an easy feat when you are diving in high current speeds, trying to take blood from a massive animal in the middle of the open ocean. However, it is something very exciting to do and very important to do because of what information we can gain from this. So what we're doing from this is we're looking at the hormone levels of the whale sharks to help us see if they are pregnant. Unfortunately, because nobody has really looked at the blood hormone levels of adult female whale sharks anywhere in the world, this is just providing baseline data. So until we have an ultrasound scan of a pregnant female and the hormone levels, we won't be able to pair up what hormone levels show us that a female is pregnant. So right now we're getting baseline data. Something else that we do, which I find very important to our studies, is we're looking at the lactic acid levels in the blood. What lactic acid tells us is whether an animal is in distress. We immediately, after we draw the blood, we go back to the vessel that we're doing our research from, and we centrifuge the blood and actually look at the blood under our iStat and get the first information about partial pressure of certain gases, and then also the lactic acid levels. And we're doing this to make sure that what we're doing with our studies is not causing any unnecessary stress to these animals. We don't want to be impacting their behavior. And we want to make sure that the dive tourism here is not impacting their behavior either. It's not stressing them out. Luckily, from what we have seen, none of these animals seem stressed. None of them have shown any signs of stress from the lactic acid results. So that is very soothing. It's very good for us to know that our studies are not causing them any problems. Now, the Galapagos Whale Shark Project has tagged a lot of sharks in its time. And I want to mention 3 very important sharks that have been tagged by the project in the last few years that have contributed to conservation somehow. We have Hope, Nemo, and Coco, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them. Hope, you may have heard of her. She was a 7-meter juvenile whale shark that we tagged in 2019. And this was an amazing whale shark that we tracked constantly all the way up into 2020. And we were tracking her just as the pandemic started. And we could constantly see where she was, but she was a very shallow swimmer. So her satellite tag was always sending signal because their tags have to be out of the water to send signal. So we were constantly seeing where she was around the world. And what we discovered is that she was going around, leaving the Galapagos Marine Reserve, headed way out west, and then started doing this kind of loop around. And as she started doing that loop around, we thought she might be the first whale shark that we could track, leaving the Galapagos Marine Reserve and entering the Galapagos Marine Reserve with an actual track and path of a satellite tag. So this was really exciting to us, and that is why we named her Hope, especially during the pandemic where everyone, at least at the beginning, we were so much in shock as to what was going on, that it was necessary to have a little bit of hope in our lives. Unfortunately, She stopped pinging, I believe, in April of 2020. And at first we didn't think much about it because whale sharks don't need to be at the surface. They're not oxygen breathing animals at the surface of they don't need to breathe oxygen from outside the ocean. They can do so beneath the water with their gills. So they don't always need to be at the surface. So sometimes we lose track of our sharks for weeks and months on end without it being strange. And then they pop up again once they reach the surface and the dorsal fin comes out of the water and the tag sends us signals. What happened here is she no longer sent us signals. So after, I think it was a month and a half, we decided to take a look at what was going on with her. And then we noticed that the last transmission that Hope had was very strange. It had her traveling a very large distance at a very fast speed, which is not normal for whale sharks. We also saw that the level of the signal of the satellite tag was incredibly high. So we probably assumed that this tag was out of the water. And then when we correlated it to the fishing pressure in this area at the time that we lost her, we saw that actually this whale shark was swimming in an area with very, very high intense fishing pressure in the high seas. So even though we cannot say for certain what happened to the shark, we believe that she may have been caught by a vessel. What the story of Hope did was, because it was not just a news about a whale shark being caught, it was a story about a whale shark with a name, who we've already been talking about in the media at that point. It captured the attention of a lot of people. Maybe also because it was at the beginning of the pandemic and people needed this little spark of hope, and then we lost it. It just touched people's hearts in a way that this kind of news usually doesn't. And it became international news. We had people making infographics, comics, songs. We had people publishing news about this all across the world. So it captured the attention and told the story of what doesn't just happen to one single individual. This does not just happen to Hope. This happens to hundreds of thousands of sharks and other marine species every single year. So even though losing Hope was heart-wrenching for us, it also told a story and got people to listen. Whale sharks with a story. Then we have Nemo. Nemo was tagged a year after Hope was, in 2020. And this was a shark that actually made history. She was named Nemo because, as you can see from the photo, she was missing half of her pectoral fin and was a bit of a wonky swimmer. No, she wasn't. She actually swam fine. But because she was missing part of her pectoral fin, we called her Nemo. And she was the first whale shark recorded leaving the Galapagos Marine Reserve and actually returning to Darwin Island after an 80-day journey and around 1,600 kilometers. And this was very exciting to us because it shows the importance of the Galapagos Marine Reserve for species like this one. Then we have Coco. Coco was also tagged in 2020. And we like to call her the shark with a message. Why? Because she was the whale shark that moved from Darwin Island directly all the way to Cocos Island in Costa Rica. This area between Darwin and Cocos has already been noted as an important area for other endangered migratory species, such as other species of sharks, turtles, and marine mammals. And it had already been said that this was an important area to protect, and adding another endangered species to the list was incredibly important to show why this area needed to be protected. You see, when one of these animals leaves a marine protected area, it loses all the benefits it has in that protected area and is threatened once again by all these human threats in the open ocean. As Todd Steiner said from the Turtle Island Restoration Network, this exemplifies the need for a new type of marine protected area for highly migratory species such as sharks and sea turtles. And what's interesting of this area is that it's not just a corridor between Galapagos and Cocos. This also connects Malpelo in Colombia and Coiba in Panama. So this is a multinational area that should be protected in order to protect these endangered migratory species. This brings me to a huge success story, which is something we don't hear very often in our field of study, and it's the creation of a new marine protected area. So it was announced on November 2nd at COP26 that the marine protected area of Galapagos, the Galapagos Marine Reserve, would be expanded, and their new marine reserve sisterhood or hermandad would be created to protect exactly this migratory corridor. Not only that, but the other countries, Panama, Colombia, and Costa Rica said they would also expand their marine protected areas to be able to protect all these migratory species using this area. The declaration was actually signed on the 14th of January 2022, so this new marine protected area is now a reality. Then we have the whale sharks tagged in 2021. As you can see, most of the adult females, all of these up here that you can see, are adult females. Meanwhile, this little one is a juvenile female. She did something very different from the adult females, which is very interesting to see. While most of the adult females went from Darwin to the coast, she headed south. And from these animals, the ones that are still being tracked up to date are these three individuals. And I'm going to ask you to note this individual right here. And you can see that once again, this tag is peeing on land. You see, when I created this presentation yesterday, the reality was that 2 out of 8 of our whale sharks had some sort of vessel encounter and their tags had appeared on land. And then this morning I was checking our whale sharks, and once again, I see that another tag has appeared on land. We still have not had the time to carry an investigation to know what happened with this animal, but 3 out of 8 animals encountering vessels and having their tags appear on land just highlights the intense fishing pressure going on around these ocean areas for these animals to have these encounters. And it is just so frustrating to know that there's nothing that we could do about this for now. And it's so heart-wrenching to not know what the destiny of the whale sharks whose tags were on, what happened to them, what their real destiny was. I want to finalize by saying a huge thank you to all of our donors, our supporters, our partners. Without all of them, none of this research could be done. So thank you very much. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at sgreenITU@gmail.com, or you can email us at Galapagos Whale Shark Project @gmail.com. You can also find information about the project on our website, galapagoswhaleshark.org, or you can find us on both Instagram, Facebook, and other social media such as Twitter using the handle Galapagos Whale Shark Project. Thank you very much for listening.